Is Chelsea's investment in youth paying off? Is Todd Bowley a genius?
Has the shit stuck to the wall?
We always say Todd Bowley, of course. It's he's not the only one, of course. But are the owners of Chelsea Football Club
currently feuding, as we understand it, as
well? Yes, we know it's a bit of a madhouse with Chelsea, even under Abramovich.
Yeah,
they like to change manager fairly readily, of course, even if they'd won the league or something like that.
In the 80s, they sold cars on the pitch at half-time. they are thrilled to be chaotic.
They were once bought for £1.
Yes, I know. And it's my bid of 50p looks meagre now, doesn't it? Yeah. Oh, what an opportunity that was. But, so with Chelsea, as you say, they're feuding at board level. They're obviously, lots been made about the amount of players they've signed, all the loans coming in and out the club, da-di-da-di-da. But this season, they have a good manager. I think we would agree. What he did at Leicester was impressive. It's a small sample size, but a good sample size nonetheless.
And it was an astute appointment, wasn't it?
It was. I said that at the time, Jim.
You did.
And I'm
to be fair to you,
trying to
hate.
Yeah, I know, because nobody should be fair to me, is what you're saying. Mm-hmm. But Chelsea are in fifth. They sit 1 point behind Arsenal and Aston Villa. And obviously Arsenal are title contenders still. Aston Villa have impressed a lot.
The still after 9 games concerns me there. Got to be honest. I know we're not talking about Arsenal now, but I didn't like that. I didn't like how that felt.
To be fair, Jim, they're still title contenders. But Chelsea, they're there, and they've fielded the youngest Prem side in history this season. They are the first team in the Premier League not to use a player aged 28 or older in their first 8 games of a season.
It's hard to when you get rid of most of them.
It is. But again, though, with Maresca at the start of the season, you remember all the business. Raheem Sterling, for example. Is he playing? Is he not? Ben Chilwell, I know Ben Chilwell's still at the club and is kind of playing his way back into contention. But did you think after 9 games we would be saying this about Chelsea?
I mean, did I think after 9 games they'd be good? Yes. I mean, they are only 5th, which I appreciate is... given the standard at the very top of the league, is a very respectable position. But they are 5th, and I think that's an accurate reflection of how well they've been so far. I think there were green shoots at the end of last season. I think Poch got them playing very coherently, very entertainingly in probably the last 2-3 months of the season, maybe 2 months of the season.
They should have won the League Cup.
Yeah. They also... They felt like they grew into themselves. I've got a couple of mates who are Chelsea fans, and the one thing that you could almost chart their enjoyment of the season as an evolution of the team, because it went from maybe in about November, December being like, this is really chaotic. I think we're just going to have to lean into this because it's going to be a long season otherwise. And then by March, they were like, are we good? Like, are we actually quite good? And that's kind of shown here in the fact that Maresca's come in and he's built on the coherence that was there at the end of Pochettino's tenure and instilled his own system. The players themselves feel quite comfortable. I appreciate he's not necessarily a bellwether of how well Chelsea have been, but I look at someone like Malagusto and I think you are so impressive. You're an exceptional fullback, full stop, because he plays both sides. But he looks so comfortable now, and I think at the start of last season, he was very good, but maybe a bit hit and miss, and I feel like he feels like a more established player right now, let alone the likes of Nicholas Jackson, who's built on the promise he showed last year, and Cole Palmer, who's just brilliant. Yes. But also, it's held in little things like they've got £100+ million player warming the bench, and they're totally fine with that.
That's the funny thing with Chelsea and how you sort of judge them, isn't it? You think, oh wow, they've actually really, really picked up after all this chaos. But part of the chaos was spending an absolute fortune on some really talented players. So I mean, perhaps this shouldn't be so surprising, really. Yeah.
Well, we said this last week when we were talking about their Europa League or Europa Conference League win away in Greece. And their second string, I mean, there's Mudryk, there's Joao Felix, again,
Nkunku.
And Nkunku as well. They have a really decent squad.
Yeah, and also, I mean, we've mentioned this a few times before, but I think it's worth repeating. They had quite a few good players who missed huge chunks of last season. In some cases, the whole of last season with Romeo Lavia and Wesley Fofana as well. And
Reece James.
Nkunku, we didn't see much. Reece James as well, who feels like almost like a relic from another era, doesn't he?
Almost like a forgotten man. But I mean,
he's still only 24.
I mean, he's young, and my goodness, what a player he is. I mean, I'm hoping more for England's sake, more that he can get back because he's a fabulous player, of course. But you're right to say those things. And one man who has impressed this season so far is Nicholas Jackson.
Yeah.
Who last season he had his critics, But he became the 5th quickest player to score 20 Premier League goals for Chelsea when he scored against Newcastle. There was a lovely goal as well, well worked, of course, Palmer's pass. But I feel, relatively sorry for Neto, who played his pass very, very well. I know the Palmer pass was there, but there was 2 other bits of play, 2 other players involved in that. But Jackson took it with some aplomb. It was his 44th appearance, so 20 Premier League goals in 44 appearances isn't
Not
terrible,
bad at all, especially for his age.
Young player, new to the league, all that kind of stuff.
And last season was a really chaotic one as well, so he's done really well there.
He's only behind Diego Costa, Cole Palmer, obviously, Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, and Mark Steen.
Wow.
Which is why I pushed back.
Lovely to hear his name.
Yeah, well, this is why I pushed back on, was it you and Andy who was saying that Chelsea, similar to West Ham, in that forward players, kind of, that's where they go to disappoint.
I disagree with you on that. I think there's plenty of examples of players who have been in the striker's role at Chelsea where it hasn't quite worked out. You look at Alvaro Morata, Tammy Abraham, Gonzalo Higuain. Like they have struggled to have a consistently reliable goal scorer in that position.
Lukaku twice.
Yeah.
Gianfranco Zola.
Well, you know what? When you put it like that,
Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank.
But they're a long time ago.
Yeah. All right, so it doesn't count.
No.
Well, no, it doesn't. It's a totally different setup for Chelsea, isn't it?
All right, okay.
Jimmy Greaves was pretty handy.
Yeah, there you go. There's another one.
Sheva. Would you throw Crespo in there?
I thought Crespo. I think his reputation
Crespo
from his time at Chelsea is quite hard done by. Actually, I thought he did really well there, and he just moved on pretty quickly.
I was too lost in the fact that Hernan Crespo plays in the Premier League.
Yeah.
And I get to watch him.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Anyway, the debate will go on.
Specifically between you 2.
Chelsea fans, back me up, crying out loud. Well, Cole Palmer was getting compared to Gianfranco Zola, as perhaps one of you said a moment ago. Palmer responded by saying, I know he's an icon on FIFA, so he must have been good. I love it that when they just don't know. They don't know.
And you know, that's his business, isn't he? What he thinks about.
Well, Maresca said, I don't think Cole knows Gianfranco.
He was compared to Dennis Bergkamp a little while ago as well. I was like, I've only heard the name, so I don't really know. I like he's very refreshingly honest.
But we're now at that age, aren't we, when people would say this about us, about maybe players who lit up football in perhaps the 70s or maybe the 80s.
Oh, you don't know who Magico Gonzalez is?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And you'd be like, oh, you've heard of these players and you have reverence for them, but you didn't really. I suppose nowadays there's more footage, but the thing is, though, that also goes with the present day. There's so much footage around now, they're hardly going to go back and watch the golden years of the 90s Premier League or maybe the noughties.
I do think we have to catch ourselves when we I suppose, cast aspersions at young players who've admittedly dedicated their lives to football, but specifically their own football, and be like, oh, I can't believe you don't know who Dennis Bergkamp is. It's so crazy. Yeah. Although it would have been funny if Cole Palmer was like, yeah, I watched a few of his clips on YouTube. There's one goal that he completely miscontrols and has to run around the other side. So I find that as a bit of an insult, actually.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know.
So you asked at the start of this section, Marcus, if it looks like their strategy is paying off, and it sort of does, doesn't it? I mean, the
loath as I am
signings,
to use the word strategy, Jim.
Sure. Well, the signings they make are obviously very, very eye-catching, but that kind of makes us forget about the selling as well. I mean, they made the most from sales of all Premier League clubs in the last window. It's 147 million or 186 million, depending on your source. It's obviously these things are hard to quantify because of how contracts work, but they do bring a lot of money in as well as spending a lot of money. So they do seem to be making that churn work.
Yes.
Yeah, I also think there is, and it's important to mention this, but I feel like there's a bit of unnecessarily emotional collateral in the way they've done business as well. I think stockpiling of players is all well and good for your business model, especially when you look at those numbers of outgoings. But I thought the way they handled the Sterling thing wasn't great. I think the way they were handling the Chilwell situation wasn't great either. These are people, after all. Yeah. They're currently in a situation with Josh Achiampong, who is highly rated right back, who's at the club, who his contract expires in 2026, and basically since the middle of September they've told him, right, you need to sign a new deal because they want these players tied down to long deals, otherwise you're not going to play, which is a pretty horrendous thing to do to a teenager, really. And I appreciate this is football and there's it's a different situation there. They want a bit of loyalty shown the other way, but stuff like that, it doesn't feel good to me. It becomes a bit of a meat market. And I think that, while there were, people ridiculed how they did business, I think underlying that, for some people, maybe not everyone, was a sense of like, why it feels like some of these players are just wasting their time at Chelsea and just being used as pawns in bigger moves, in basically like elaborate PSR schemes.
Yeah, I mean, not the first club to do it, but still worth mentioning.
No, sure,
though.
but like
the scale of it.
Of course. What would success look like for Chelsea this season?
I was about to ask both of you that same question. Actually, I think I think they can have a realistic aim at a top 4 finish. And given the strength in depth they have, I mean, they can have a tilt at a cup too. I think they feel ahead of schedule in terms of this project, right? They feel like they've really made giant leaps forward at the start of this season. Although, we are only 9 games in, so perhaps this is all premature.
But you said it looks
a bit more coherent, doesn't it? And it feels more coherent.
Nobody can take away your feelings, Jim.
That's true.
I think, not like that, Vish. I think the Europa Conference League is just an obvious one.
Yeah.
Because again, the
They've got a bespoke squad for it.
Well, indeed. But I mean, the financial disparities, as our man Andy Brassel often talks about, and he's absolutely right. It's just crazy to think that Chelsea are in that competition. You look at the squad they have.
Singing that song again.
Champions of Europe, they know what they are.
They're going to win it, aren't they?
I mean, really, that competition, again, English teams should be regularly winning that or going, final semi kind of thing. I suppose you could say that about any.
That's why Villa messed up by getting in the Champions League, didn't they?
They did, exactly.
Idiots.
Yeah. And now look at them in the Champions League. They're top of it. So maybe they were like, sod this. Emery's done. Don't worry, lads. We'll hop the middle, the one I normally win.
Yeah.
We'll go straight for the prize. So I know what you mean. I think a bit of silverware always goes down well.
I think 2. I think top 4 finish in 2 cups.
2 cups?
Yeah. I think
Which other one? Go on.
The League Cup.
Of course, come the summer, they've also got the FIFA Club World Cup to look forward to as well.
They probably have, given they could probably rest everyone who played more than 15 games this season.
They've got a third squad for it.
Squad,
Genius.
They're like way ahead of the curve on that. I mean,
like the polyphonic spree.
Coming up after this, Snoop Dogg wants to invest in a Scottish football team.
Hi, I'm Linvoy Primus, and you're listening to the Football Ramble.
Right, gentlemen, let's turn our attention to Newcastle United, who have made an underwhelming start to the season, currently 12th in the Premier League, just 1 point ahead of Manchester United. For all intents and purposes, they are now a mid-table team. I put that to you, Vitushan, a mid-table team, Newcastle United.
Yeah, it feels that way, and it's strange to think that when the Saudi project started, that this would be where they were.
Yeah.
More or less 2 years on. And yet at the same time, you look at the way they've been playing and the underlying numbers, and they have been, disappointing in their own way in terms of, like, say, not taking their chances and things like that. Even on the weekend, they had a higher XG than Chelsea. They basically, the way I see it, anecdotally anyway, is that they're just not as ruthless as they were when they got that Champions League spot in 22-23.
Yeah.
And I remember during that season, though, the impression you got from teams that played them were like, this is so annoying.
Yeah,
they
were awful
they were
against.
all over us. They're physical. They hit us on the break. They're sharp. We get no room to breathe. It's a joyless experience going to Newcastle as an away team. And they seem to have lost that. And they've lost it because essentially they haven't invested in their squad because of what PSR has done to, I suppose, tightening the spending across the board, which means that the players they have now are basically the players they had then. And, they seem a little more tired. They don't seem as at it, when they have injuries as well, because of their lack of squad depth, because of the way they were competing on a number of fronts last season, that the drop-off between a starter and someone who comes in is so vast.
Well, you saw that. Look. I mean, I know Chelsea, it's a bit unfair to compare them to Chelsea, perhaps, who we know spent big and we just spoke about them. But you look at the difference in the benches.
Yeah.
On Sunday or whenever they played, they had 2 emergency keepers on the bench, pretty much.
Yeah,
because you could say,
and very quickly, you just calling them a mid-table team. I suppose it's important to point out that that's a regression rather than a massive drop-off. So from the 2019-20 season onwards, they were 13th in that season, 12th after that, 11th, and then 4th, and then 7th. Now 7th. It's probably an accurate representation of where they are in the current ecosystem, but it is a massive drop-off from where they should be, given how this all started, with all this talk of investment and boosting them back to quote-unquote where they should be.
Well, they were pretty much mid-table under Steve Bruce, really.
Yeah.
What you've just said there.
I think it's a sign of how much harder it is to kind of just suddenly become a super club when you've got all that money behind you now, isn't it?
They're not firing. They're not ticking. Tonali, since coming back, has not quite had the impact.
Again, though, I mean, he's missed a lot of football there, and you would expect that would
Fine,
he'll
Jim.
get up to speed.
But whatever the reasons, he's not had the impact.
Sure.
Yeah.
And he needs to have, you can sort of, what's Howe going to say to the owners? Now, the other rumours are that the Saudis have kind of lost a bit of interest in that. Maybe that's why they got Hervé Renard back. Let's get him back. I want something shiny, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
That's only going to be speculation. But you wonder, I mean, there was the promise of investment into the city. It's not happened yet. Could happen, but it's not happened yet. You wonder if, and this is very early days to say this, but you're beginning to get a little bit of dissent. You wonder if this is just like a slightly wealthier, or not slightly, obviously, much wealthier, but in terms of PSR, that limits you. So that's why I'm saying slightly wealthier version of what they had before. Because, as I say, that with the windows, people may be saying, well, business-wise, you could have done this, could have done that. I know they didn't get Gay, but the fact is they didn't get him.
It's funny. It does.
Do you see what I mean,
feels
though?
like that, doesn't it? It feels like they've got handcuffs on almost.
Yeah, and there's suddenly a bit of drift.
Yeah.
Now, it's only 9 games, I understand, but the drift started last season, as Vish talked about. Doesn't take long in football for suddenly situations to turn a bit sour and toxic.
It could feel like, maybe a month or so down the line, like Eddie Howe might be under pressure. We kind of felt a bit like that around this time last season, didn't we? Or maybe a bit later into the season. But do you think that's possibly on the cards?
Well, I think it is on the cards, because as you say, we saw it last season before, and if it goes like this, then what do you do? I think he's by most accounts he's sort of fairly popular and whatnot around there, because he seems to be like the face of post Mike Ashley.
Yeah.
But that, you can only ride that for a certain amount of time. And I don't necessarily think it's his fault, because, as I say, with the transfer business they've had, but he is the manager. So there is some responsibility there.
I do think people understand that they perhaps overachieved in his first season there.
Possibly. But
again, the credit for that will only go so far.
You get used to it. As I say, you finished 7th, was it last season, which is not terrible. And it is early days, we stress. Again, Gordon comes back from this scanner injury or whatever and hits the ground running, and suddenly it starts clicking.
Or Isaac squares that ball off.
Yeah.
So against Chelsea, they weren't that bad. And Howe has been saying this. He's saying the performances are there. So we've looked at it in a kind of very negative light there. It could be, thought of, okay, right, it's happening. They're going to click, let's see what's going to go on here. But the fact is, here we are right now. And it's been a very underwhelming start to the season by Newcastle. There's no two ways about that. Funnily, Rafinha has been linked with a move from Barcelona to Newcastle after Paul Robinson revealed that he'd heard whispers that Rafinha could return to the Premier League. I mean, after
in the former England goalkeeper Paul Robinson.
I love this, because this is not really about Rafinha, is it? This story?
No, it isn't. And I love the fact that Rafinha just scored at the Bernabeu in a 4-0 win for Barcelona.
In the same week he scored a Champions League hat-trick.
Against Bayern. I think he seems happy where he is. Yeah. I know Barcelona probably pay their players in magic beans at the moment, but still, it would be quite the move.
He's also been captaining them this season in the absence of Marc-Andre ter Stegen.
Yeah.
So...
Hey, but Paul Robinson's heard whispers, though.
But it might be, generally, because the situation at Barcelona is broadly quite ludicrous as well.
Well, it
might be that in a month's time he's like, Rafinha wakes up, checks
I want to be paid.
Checks his account and is like,
it's too warm here.
Sorry.
Boring.
Why does everyone go to bed so late?
Yeah.
It was where's my money?
Yeah, I thought after that hat-trick against Bayern you might start to pay me out. Yeah, it's a crazy one. So I mean, if Newcastle sign, which I can't imagine they will, it would be a hell of a sign. Anyway, let's move on to Snoop Doggy Dogg. He has revealed he wants to invest in Celtic. He's been inspired by Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, and Snoop D-O-double-G said, I love what Ryan has done with Wrexham. He loves it. He loves it, Jim. He absolutely loves it.
So I want to take a small club.
Build them up. Investing in a sports team has been something I've been looking at for a long time. If the chance came to invest in Celtic, I would be crazy not to take a look at it. He has spoken about his affection for Celtic, and he said, their fans are the best in football. They're spoken about all across Europe, da-da-da-da-da. Although, when he did a gig in Rotterdam, Celtic were playing Feyenoord that night, and he went on stage with a Feyenoord shirt, so he might have some explaining to do.
I thought this was going to go a different way. I thought he was wearing a different shirt. I thought, wow.
And then he did a gig in Glasgow.
I think Snoop might have the charm to pull that off.
I think he'll be okay.
Yeah. He spends his money in fascinating ways. I think he has a blunt roller. And he also has someone to make sure that no one gets too high. There's like a vibe guy,
really,
that he pays.
Right. The mind simply boggles. He did say about Celtic, their mascot is a hound. You couldn't make that up. Snoop Dogg becomes Hoopy the Hound. That's got to be a match made in heaven.
Who knew that Celtic's mascot was a hound before this?
I had no idea.
No idea at all.
It's absurd, yeah. Why is it a dog?
I don't know. Maybe this
is a Rangers mascot a cat?
What are you doing?
I don't know. I don't Rangers.
Celtic, they're the ones in blue, yeah? God, Bennett. I reckon that they probably just got a hound in to try and attract investment from Snoop Dogg. There you go. Hey, you can be the mascot if you want. Oh, dear. Right.
What's he into? Dogs?
Yeah, other dogs.
He's got an album called Doggy, so it must be dogs.
He loves them.
He's got a dog pound as well, I think. Yeah, you just get the mutts in.
Get them all in. Coming up after this, Pep Guardiola admits he will learn from Russell Martin. Right, everybody, let's turn our attention to tonight's footballing action. Southampton hosts Stoke City tonight at 7 p.m. It's the Carabao Cup fourth round, of course. It's finally here. And we're looking forward to it. Of course, Southampton lost 1-0 to Manchester City on Saturday, which I think for most teams, not just Premier League, most teams, that would feel like a victory.
Yeah, it's not bad, is it?
It's not. I mean, ultimately, it's nil point.
Yeah.
And nil goal, but a more encouraging performance. And Russell Martin got the full praise from Pep Guardiola.
That's when you know you've lost.
Yeah.
It's a sequel to the Nathan Redmond thing, wasn't
it? Little bit.
Like Southampton related.
Yeah, well, Pep said we were not sloppy, we were not flat, careful, but we struggled to regain the ball because Southampton are really good. It's a good game to learn as a manager. I'm going to learn a lot with Russell because they did really well.
Yeah,
I don't think, because if
just squeeze his cheek while you're at it.
Yeah, but if Ferguson or Mourinho or Allardyce or the like, Allardyce would never say that, but if a manager said something like that, it is normally patronising. But with Pep, I think he does go away and he would study them to the hilt. Whether he would learn anything, I don't know, but he would probably spot something. He's just that type of bloke, isn't he?
I think he does that for every game.
He's a mad scientist.
I've been a bit flippant there, but he obviously is incredibly diligent on what he does, and he, there's been loads of different stories about him learning different things from different managers. Just last week, we were talking about the time that I think Carl Walker set up a chat with Neil Warnock.
On the BBC,
right. But I think this was purely done for two reasons. One, because they won the game and Southampton aren't a threat. But secondly, he's almost trying to, him and Bernardo Silva as well at the end of the game, they're almost trying to goad other bigger teams into coming to the Etihad and playing more open.
This is how you should play. You should play in a way that will beat you, but you've kind of...
they nearly got something, so...
Yeah, exactly. And almost like, if it's...
Do you think it's rope-a-dope? Do you think we're going to see Southampton and teams like that go there? Man City, will only... I did a Gary Cook there. Man City will only beat them 1-0. Oh, you see what... and then bang!
But it feels like, the more you go through the quotes overall, again, not just from Guardiola, but it reads less like praise of Southampton and more like a dig at everyone else.
It's great.
Yeah, it's very, very good, actually. I mean, Southampton, to be fair to them, they did take a possession game to City, and not many teams do it, and they did only lose 1-0. A friend of mine and I were talking about this on Saturday night, and actually they've had a few games like that where they feel like a little bit of a tough nut to crack, but then you have to consider that no one in human history has ever actually failed to crack a nut.
Yes.
And that's where the problems come in.
I can't argue with that.
Man City had 22 shots, 8 on target. 13 of those 22 shots were inside the box. They're next year close to 0.05 off 3.
Nuts everywhere.
I feel like you're going to give the shipping forecast.
I don't know why I phrased it like that. But essentially, they should have won this by more.
Yeah.
And they were able to do that because Southampton played quite openly.
Yes, indeed they did. Well, it has been reported that Russell Martin could be sacked if Southampton lose tonight.
On a wet, windy Tuesday night against Stoke. They can't sack him after that.
Well, I suppose, I mean, they might consider it embarrassing going out to a championship side.
Sure.
I'd be surprised. I mean, if Stoke won 6-0, maybe. I don't think he'll get sacked.
Yeah, isn't there not a sense that the smart play here would be to not play your first team? They're playing Everton on the weekend.
Yes.
So they presumably would want to kind of, I don't know, like protect their wares for that?
Well, whatever he does, Pep can learn from it.
Yes.
That's something that we've all learned.
Maybe he's learned that from Pep. Oh, you don't have to play your first team here.
True. Well, he won't be on the touchline for Southampton. He was booked for a third time this season on Saturday. 3 strikes and you're out of the dugout specifically.
For a bit.
In a different competition.
That's right. Elsewhere in the Carabao Cup tonight, Brentford take on Sheffield Wednesday, who are fresh after beating Portsmouth 2-1 on Friday night. So they've had an extra day. Of course, Brentford, though, we love the chaos factor. Sheffield Wednesday, beware. Be very, very aware.
Was that a pun? Beware.
Always a pun with me, mate.
Good.
Always a pun with me. Of course, we've got more Carabao Cup games on Wednesday night as well. But elsewhere today, everybody, it's something I don't feel like I need to say this because everyone is obviously well aware of it and everyone is absolutely pumped for it. The second round of the FIFA Intercontinental Cup gets underway. 5 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time.
So if you were...
Because it has changed.
Yeah. If you were under the impression that the FIFA Club World Cup was some sort of amalgamation of lots of other different little continental club competitions, and you were thinking, oh, that's a shame.
Yeah.
Well, have we got news for you?
We have. And it is news. This took us about, 20 minutes to get our heads around earlier.
And a whole round that we missed.
So as I stress, it's the second round, which is when the big teams come in. Because those muggy little Aucklanders got knocked out in the first round, of course. If you are from Auckland, hello, you're very welcome. Yes, Al Ain beat Auckland City 6-2 in a match that none of us will forget, I'm sure. So the Intercontinental Cup, what on earth is that, I hear you cry? Well, it's basically what the Club World Cup was before they changed that. So the FIFA Club World Cup, already mentioned on this show, because Chelsea are going to be involved, among other teams. There's going to be 32 of the buggers involved, teams that is, not players, involved come the summer. But the Intercontinental Cup is something that's going to happen every year. So that's safe, that's in the bag. But the FIFA Club World Cup is, of course, once every 4 years. You can't have a World Cup every year, Jim. That would be crazy, right?
Yeah.
They are probably looking into that, though.
They're like, why don't we think of that? That's a good idea, that. So the Intercontinental Cup is basically what we had before. So the final of the Intercontinental Cup will feature the Champions League winners, of course, Real Madrid. Then it'll also feature the champions of... Right, here we go. The FIFA African Asian Pacific Cup, who will play the winner of the FIFA Derby of the Americas, which is South America and CONCACAF, so basically all of the Americas, in a match named the FIFA Challenger Cup. So the winner of the FIFA Challenger Cup, which will either be an African, Asian, or team from the Americas, will play Real Madrid in the FIFA Intercontinental Final.
Why are they so they're definitely playing Real Madrid, like the final boss?
Because they're the Champions League winner, but presumably they also have some sort of group booking.
It does feel a bit like Mortal Kombat, doesn't it?
Yeah.
With all this stuff and the Challenger Cup and the FIFA Derby of the Americas and so on. And then Real Madrid are like that bloke with the 4 arms in the final.
Yes. Yeah.
We're all clear on that.
And this is happening every year?
Every year, Jim.
Every year.
Okay. We can look forward to this every year. Because I just wanted to make sure people knew that in case they thought the FIFA Club World Cup that's happening in the summer is replacing that.
Like you might reasonably surmise.
Like we all thought was actually happening. So Al Ahly face Al Ain tonight in the second round. So get your eyes on that. It's a bit of a taster, as I say, to what's to come.
Actually, what time zone is it? And it might be done by the time this comes up.
Well, it's in Cairo, so similar to here.
Yeah.
Is Cairo not in the same time zone as us?
I don't know.
Why don't you have a little Google while I'm filling for you? So they're going to play, and then the derby
Egypt,
of the
Pharaoh's time.
You forgot pyramids.
Time. El Neni. They're 3 hours in front.
Are they really?
Yeah.
My goodness.
Well done them.
Well done. Yeah, well, maybe it was more until recently. Who knows? But so it's a 5 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time kickoff. Everybody, I don't want you to miss that one. And then do you know what? I'm so excited. I'm going to.
If you do miss it, maybe Mummy will record it for you.
Richard O'Brien, Mumsy. And I'm so excited for this. On the 11th of December, of course, that is when the other second round game plays, which is the Derby of the Americas. And then in December, 14th of December, the Challenger Cup final. And then the Intercontinental Cup will be decided on the 18th of December. And that just gets the juices going for the FIFA Club World Cup in the summer, Jim.
Yeah. I mean,
Is that all new to you? Or news to you?
But it's a competition where every round of it is also a competition.
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It is. It's
I feel like it's like the
Six Nations.
If it's like the Six Nations in rugby, it's like the Calcutta Cup. That's between just those two. And then you've got the other cup, which is just between these few. But then if you beat the other ones, like Italy and that, then you get the other cup.
Or like American college football, where every game is like a different bowl.
True.
So it's like the Gatorade Bowl, and that gets you through to like another. But then you play another team, and it's a different thing. Yeah, I feel like all these teams are going to wake up in the week of these games and be like, "What the hell is that?" It's like, sorry, it's on the docket. I was supposed to mention it last week, but we've got to go to the Middle East to play a game.
Ah, beautiful. Just love football. More of it, please.
Thank you for watching a clip from the Football Ramble podcast. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an upload. A single upload. Don't miss out on the uploads. The uploads are important.